close the school.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
I could even make it disappear.
I think it's time for you to go back to school.
Okay, I've started my final animation project. I went to my long shot and I dragged all these sprites into my backpack. So now I'm going to drag them here. And let me hit save now. One thing I forgot to get was the backdrop. So I'm going to go grab that from that project. I'm going to click this folder so I can go to my stuff. I'm going to go back to the long shot animation. I'm going to go to the backdrops. It's not necessary. And I'll open my backpack and drag that in. Okay. Now, save. Now let me go to my final animation. See inside. Let me go to the backdrops. And I'm going to drag the backdrop in. And I'm going to give this a name. So this is my first scene. So I'm going to put that one first. And then I'm going to go to my next scene, which was the mid-shot animation. And let's see if I have new things to drag in. Well, I know the backdrop changes a little bit. So I'm going to go to my backdrop. Now I don't want to get confused with this other backdrop, so I'm going to right click, delete it. That way I don't get confused, and I'm going to put this one in here. The problem is I can't drag Abby over again because I don't want two Abby sprites. So what I need to do is go into the code of Abby, and I need to bring these codes with me. So I already had the code for Abby in my backpack, so I'm going to just drag in the code I need for Abby. And I don't want to get confused with these other codes, so I'll just save now. Let me go back to my final project. And let's just work on connecting Abby's new code for the next scene. So let's start by adding the second backdrop. This is going to be really important. So I'm going to go to my backpack and grab out the second one. I'm going to call this mid-shot scene 2. Ooh, should make that bigger. Okay. So let me play this, what I have so far. So what I want to happen is once Abby says you can't close the school for the teacher, I want it to change to the next backdrop. So I'm going to take the broadcast message, oops, it's in events, and I'm going to broadcast new message scene 2. When the backdrop, when start, switch backdrop to scene 1. But events, when I receive scene 2, then it will switch backdrop to scene 2. What is this? Okay. So now I need to bring in the code for Abby. So if I bring this in, This is the new code from scene 2. And this one. But this last piece of code I brought in is a problem because it says when clicked. And we don't want it to say when clicked. We want it to say once the backdrop switches to scene 2. So I'm going to pull that off. And let me go to events and grab this. Okay, so when it receives scene 2, it's going to do all these things, but the one thing is that we have to change is I had changed Abby's size here, and now I can't do that. So what I'm going to have to do is go into the looks and change the size by, or set the size. Set the size to, not 100, but I think it was, let's see, I think she was 160. Or let's try 200. That looks about right. Okay. So I don't need any of this. Delete, 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 but I need the codes for my other 3 sprites that I have here. And I might need the clouds to add some code to the cloud to make that work, but let me go back and get my other ones. Okay, so the first problem, I wrote some comments for you. The first problem I had was that this message, "you can't close the school," was happening at the same time the evil villain started saying the first line of the second scene. So I added this wait before we broadcast the message so that you could see this whole message. I also switched this from this type of block, the say, to only say it for 2 seconds so I can control it. I actually think I could have this at 1.5. That way the character can say it, we see it, we take a moment to understand what's happening, and then we switch to scene 2. I switched these from the event when I receive scene 2 to these because this problem, and you could have either one, doesn't matter, but since it works I just kept this one. One thing I also noticed was that I had to hide my person when I switched to scene 3 because then I had Abby's big head and I had the teacher like standing right here, and it was all the characters, the evil villain, they were all here all together, and it looked really crazy, so I had to hide it. But once I hid it, I had to put up here, I had to make sure there was a show. I also, when I changed the size of the character for the second scene, I had to go back and set the size for the first scene, for when the whole animation starts. And there was one other problem that I ran into, was that I lost the sound. So I only dragged over the code, but I didn't drag over the sound, so I had to go to sounds and then drag these into here.